We've got number 4, topic number 4. This is whether your discovering awareness is a stage in the search, which Anima and Shawn will be a proponent of, and discovering awareness is the end of the search, which
you could
Mike
only
and-
agree with it.
and Bob will be.
That doesn't ring a bell. That doesn't seem like the one I was reading up there thinking about. But anyway, say it again.
So, you're a proponent of discovering awareness is the end of the search.
That's our position.
Well, we're going to stick to it.
Okay. So we've got 4 minutes, and then we'll then have 1 more minute. Oops.
I think they start, don't they?
I'll start since I'm most prepared.
Use your microphone, please. Use the microphone, please. Thanks.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, fight!
Yeah. So this is a difficult topic, but I'm going to read something from Direct Mind by Mr. Rose. So the question, I take it that you don't believe in God. Rose, that's not correct. Don't get me wrong. I believe that the enlightenment experience is the same as the God experience. But I like to qualify this because the term God is generally used with certain implications. Question, God is thought of as being a mind, a perfect divine mind. Rose, well, yes, but there's a concept that reaches beyond that. There is an intermediary state that you enter after death, and that is mind, the mind dimension. Mary Baker Eddy discovered that this existed possibly by studying some Eastern philosophy, and she calls it universal mind. In other words, in your individual mind, you have your own private thoughts, but nevertheless, your mind functions at its best when it is in contact with the mind dimension. Some sects in India call this the Buddhic mind. Paul Brenton calls it the overself, of which we are all a part. Like the Brahm, so to speak, the basic concept of the Atman and the Brahm would be closest. If you're talking about the God concept, the Atman being the individual ray that emanates from the central light, that is the Brahm. The ray of light that plays upon the void seems to be an individual and identifies itself with a certain name, but it is really attached at the other end to the Brahm, the absolute. So this is an entirely different concept of God than the guy with the big whiskers that sits up there and says, hey, you're getting out of line down there. You broke a rule. Question, are you saying that the God is universal mind? Mr. Rose, no, I don't say that. God is even universal mind. I think that the absolute is a stage beyond mind. The mind is a dimension. And you discover that the mind is a dimension by losing the mundane mind. The individual mind, the mundane mind, gives way, and you realize that you don't have an individual mind, that it is mostly just contact with mind stuff, so to speak. So, I personally, I do think that absolute state, truth cannot be different. You know, it cannot be each person finds a different truth. It's truth, and different apparatus finds and expresses it differently, probably perceives it differently. So we have to look at our own, glasses and our own language that we are using. And I feel you can't talk about it just because it's, whatever I try to express it or say about it, it becomes false also, because it's a state of being. It's the essence. It's the unmanifested. And yes, there is an experience, and all experiences start and end. However, the individual consciousness, the awareness, whatever gets dumped by the memory of it, I think. And it's accessible. It's like you can, from the corner of your eyes, you can feel it. But I can't access it at my will. I can't go in that unmanifested state. I've tried, But I feel, but it's available when I'm not, it just comes up, that absolute unmanifested state. So it's a different state altogether from awareness that we talk about, you know, the big awareness and individual mind being that awareness.
Thank you.
Well, I definitely agree with what my partner here had to say, and so just to piggyback off of that a little bit, if you go inside yourself right now and notice, here's what's happening, right? You have an awareness. Maybe you have an awareness of thinking. So you have some separation between thinking and this thing that you may call awareness. And here's the problem. It's probably at the root of this whole dialectic is, well, what do I mean by awareness? Am I talking about witnessing consciousness? Am I talking about consciousness? Am I talking about capital A awareness, small a, where all that? Well, what's happening right now, whatever you want to call it, right? You have some distance, probably from your practice, some distance between your awareness and thinking, your awareness and feeling. And then you may have, I'm aware of myself being aware. You may have that phenomenon going on. So you have a individual consciousness of awareness. You may, in moments, in the TAT meeting, sitting out, looking at the trees, you may, in a moment, have an awareness that the self, this little box that awareness is normally in, dissipates, and you expand, awareness expands, the self fades away. Right? That awareness is, there's a body and a mind, there's a window of physicality that awareness occurs in. And that connection to that awareness is an incredibly important platform, a space for another inquiry, which is, well, what is the source of this? My highest experience of being manifested. Where is that coming from? And that, to me, is why I'm on the side of awareness is a stage. You could say there's stages of awareness, or there's an expansion of awareness. But ultimately, like, how, where, why? You say, oh, awareness just is. No, I demand to know where, how, why. So, if we're talking about an ultimate answer to that source, I love Amy and I go to the Clairvision school, and one of the main things I got out of the Clairvision school and the Clairvision teachings was sourcing. what is the source? And it tied in perfectly with Rose talking about reversing the vector. Like, what is the source? I must find the source. Well, awareness emanates from somewhere.
Wait, somebody say my...
I guess,
Thank you, Shawn.
I guess I'm next.
Mike, you're next.
That was the knowing nod. So, thank you for helping to make the point we were going to make down here.
You tell him, Mike.
So it's, so any questions? No, the thing that I hear him saying is that the prompt, with thanks to Art, that you know, discovering is the key word, discovering awareness. You know, you spoke of different phases in a search where you get an inkling, and then maybe you're lucky enough to get a real strong impression of it. And it comes and goes. And all of us here have had something along those lines. It seems to come, and then what causes it to disappear? And Shawn's question is the ultimate question, is what's the source of that? And you know, I had a very similar thought to just talk about the progression of that can happen. You know, the idea of feeling the connection when you're outdoors and you suddenly feel a connection. I know some people here have had that, even to the point of feeling love while they sit and they just overcome with love sitting outside. And you know, the point is, something always comes back into view to keep you from seeing the source of awareness. And so even the situation that Ramana Maharshi speaks to, the Kevala Nirvikalpa Samadhi, where the mind is immersed in awareness, it's still, and you know, the identity is lost during that time. But when the bucket's drawn out of the well, by his analogy anyway, there's a re-identification with the bucket, and not with that with which it was immersed. So the discovery, there's phases of discovery along the way, but the final discovery, the realization of the source of awareness, or awareness itself, just being, not necessarily anything else, with nothing else, is a final, what's our words, the end of the search. I think it becomes apparent too, just as you inferred, that along the way you realize that it's not found in thought, and you know there's a you know, when you re-identify with the self, you're re-identifying with the mind, some aspect of the mind or the body, and that in the deepest of these preliminary types of satoris, some of those disappear from view. And I think the thing is, when you go back to the mind, you're going back to a tool that doesn't make the trip. And we all think, like Augie's stories earlier, that you know, we're going to live forever, and somehow something of us is going to survive, and so we're clinging to that to the end. So, you know, the looking for the source, you know, raises the question: is it possible that one can simply find that awareness alone just simply is, without the grasping mind? And I think that's a lot of what all of our reverse vector, all of our seeing what we're not, the entire process of backing away from what we believe, what the mind is presenting us and the body is presenting us to believe in, that the more and more distance you get from that, the more the opportunity comes to fall back into that, for all that to fall away and then end up with what remains, which is absent all of that. And so I'll leave it to Bob at this point to talk about how that's unmistakable and ever present and all that.
We got him on the run.
Is it my, well, I didn't do my homework like these guys did. And it's interesting because when I first read the phrase, okay, discovering awareness is the end of the search, I focused more on the idea, maybe it was already in the other dialectic, well, is there an end of the search? And so the first words that came to my mind on seeing that phrase was, well, yes, there is an absolute answer. And I'm not sure, I think maybe the word awareness is, and maybe it's a little bit too constraining. It's too specific because the way we define awareness when we think about it, you get into a subject-object dichotomy and you think about, well, I'm aware, and what are you aware of? So a side tangent on that would be how I have in my own way I see it, I have used the words consciousness and awareness very specifically. One is personal, and one is impersonal. Yeah. So so I'm going to go back to my first statement. So there is an absolute answer, and it is a final answer. It would be the end of the search, but you don't see it because you're too distracted. So we're always looking at something. So we're conscious of being alive, and we're conscious of being us. So we have this sense of self, and we're staring at that, that sense of self, and then through that layer, we're staring at everything in the external world, the stream of experience that's rushing in and proving to us that self is real because all this stuff is happening to me. And that's all a distraction. So if where and I'll stick with the word awareness because that's what we're the phrasing we started with, but the word God could potentially be a better word because it's kind of a meaningless word. Except for all of the baggage that it's taken on in Christian dogma, which there was a reason that Rose used the word absolute. I think it's a better phrase, or ground of being. I mean, I hadn't run into that phrase before Art wrote his book, and I always thought that was a very powerful way to describe something. So anyway, you're so distracted by the focus of your attention is on external objects, and I've said that the objects of your attention is experience, and your most immediate experience is your sense of self. Yes, the sense of self-consciousness is actually an experience. It's something that's being witnessed, and it arises from the physical machinery and all the fire hose of sensory impressions that are coming in. But there's a power behind that, and that's the impersonal, eternal part of where something in you is eternal, something about you is eternal, and where you intersect with eternality is this thing that we're calling awareness, and it's what makes consciousness possible. So I don't know, you know, my words didn't amount to much, but I guess basically my point is that yes, there's an absolute final answer, and it's available to everybody, but you're too distracted. You're not looking in that direction, and you don't, you know, there's some programming in just the sheer momentum coming out of the womb. And by the time you're old enough to, you know, by the time you reach the age of reason, you're already cemented absolutely into this identity, and, you know, the object is facing outward and external, the stream of experience. And so by the time you start asking these kinds of questions in your, you know, late teens, early 20s, or beyond, you are so laminated to identity, it is very difficult to turn the attention around. But that which powers it is this awareness, and the impersonal permanent is what is holding you, or in which the personal impermanent arises. So, I don't know.
Thank you.
I should have done my homework.
So now we've got 20 minutes for questions and answers. Someone have a question?
I got a problem. I wrote the panel.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
This wasn't pre-done. It's just occurred to me right now. Rose wrote somewhere, and I don't recall where it was. It might have been some talk or a book. And check me if you don't think this is accurate, but it was, you're aware before you're born, you're aware after you die, but you're not conscious of awareness. And to me, I think that the dialectic topic was one that Shawn had mentioned. I don't think it was on my original list, was it? Yeah. So to me, what I thought it was pointing at is what Rose talked about, or what Rose labeled on Jacob's ladder, the individual consciousness of awareness, is like the kickoff point for going into absolute realization. So does that sound familiar to you?
It sounds very familiar. In fact, you spoke those words at the last meeting here that I attended and you were at. And when I heard you say them, I thought, yeah, that's exactly right. That's it's what I just said. So the permanent, impersonal, grounded being precedes you. So awareness is, if we stick with that word, and of course there's no consciousness because the vehicle for consciousness hasn't manifested yet. So it arises contemporaneously with the body and machinery, and that gives that gives consciousness. So first there's awareness, and then there's consciousness, but you're not conscious of awareness. And after you die, there's awareness because the machinery disappears, and the impermanent personal consciousness likewise dissipates with it. So to me, it's maybe an elegant way or a good way of trying to explain the paradox or the riddle of how does this impermanent, really hesitate to say illusory, but everyone I talk to that has had this realization, they all, in various words, say that they saw their own non-existence. They saw the illusion of identity, the illusion of ego. And yet this personality has this memory and knowledge of what I am. And how is that possible? Well, it's because that which animates me and enlivens me, that which makes consciousness possible, is awareness. So, no one said it better than Meister Eckhart when he said, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me."
Addressing the question. The question is the discovery of awareness, right?
Well, okay, so put that in the form of the question. Though the question is,
well, what's the question you're?
Your question was what did Rose say about you're aware before you?
The question that you're addressing, what is the discovery of awareness a stage, of the path, or is it the end of the path?
I'm not sure discovery is a accurate way to depict it. When I listen to Shawn describe it, it sounded to me like, okay, he's defining it in that context. He's defining awareness differently than I do.
And that's why I put out this thing to say that the way Rose differentiates, he might have switched them around every time he talked about them, but and because he wasn't a wordsmith really, but he was trying to say there's a distinction between X and Y.
Well, I think, okay, let me try.
X is like when we're born, we're arguably conscious. When we're 5 years old, we're arguably self-conscious, right? We're conscious of consciousness.
Well, okay, let's.
But if you say self-awareness, that in that term, if you're distinguishing between X and Y.
I think the discovery is. I don't like the word discovery. I think it's a seeing, and it's a seeing when the direction of look when the distraction, when you stop looking at all the distraction, and the focus of attention turns around and goes back, goes inward. So is that discovering awareness, or is it becoming aware? And who becomes aware?
So Rose
It's
was
your
talking
core
about
nature.
becoming conscious of awareness. And so does that?
Well, I guess okay, then when this realization occurred, when this seeing occurred for me, I became conscious of awareness. But I don't.
Not before that.
Yeah, no, I would. To me, if you want to use that way of explaining it, then when you become conscious of awareness, that's the end of the search. You've reached the final. And if you'd have to define awareness a little bit more on a mundane level,
It's not consciousness.
Awareness is not consciousness. You lost me.
I don't know how to get past the logic of it.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I don't know how to get past the logic of the words either.
In the Jacob's ladder, you have individual consciousness of awareness and then something above it. So which one is?
Yeah,
I think I'm sorry. What Anima was saying.
Hang on,
There's a
Josh
question
in the very
right
back
there.
has a question.
Oh, well, I just wanted to share a description that I heard one time that might be relevant to your question. I've heard it said awareness and appearance arise simultaneously, and that when awareness mistakenly identifies with appearance, that's when consciousness.
These words.
Well, yeah, these are just just a description based on the words. But.
To me, the word consciousness is associated with the experiencer, individuality, the self, and that arises with no experience, no experiencer. Experience starts to arise in the womb at some point in the development of the zygote becomes an embryo, and I don't know when, but I feel that it's sometime before, like certainly before the hour of birth. So maybe before the first several days of birth. I don't know, maybe it's a continuum. It doesn't matter. At some point in time, the machinery starts to register experience. And until that happens, all there is this ground of being, which I'm using as another phrase for awareness. This ground of being is aware, but I think awareness is kind of a limiting word because it immediately gets into a personal point of perspective and subject-object, and that's why the two words get interchanged so much, and then it becomes confusing to talk about them. So, consciousness of awareness. It's because my nature is awareness, or the ground of being. I'm not separate from that.
Okay. So anybody else?
I wanted to hear from Anima, because it seems to me that what you read was speaking kind of directly to that point, because it's beyond the personal awareness but then there's this other place that's not quite it yet still, but it is a more aware place than the personal awareness. But you have to go even further, which is beyond Anima.
I stayed away from the word awareness, consciousness, just because I don't know, I get confused. Seriously. So that's not my language. That's not how I saw it. When I was 18, one day my dad used to be like, who's aware? So I realized my mind itself could watch itself, so it's not something out there that I'm aware. I was aware of everything, I was the observer and I was the actor. So it's to me that's one stage. And then there was a particular time when I saw very clearly that my, again, universal mind and my mind was how it was just such a vivid dream kind of thing. And that dream, all these mystical experiences, they happen and they end. But they're trying to show something to me, So what did it show to me? That I'm a part of a universal mind. It's like a set theory, And then your personal consciousness, the personal I, my mind becomes less important. To me, it was becoming less of me, The boundaries were getting, but still, the boundaries still remain, I think, till the very end, till you become that source. I think it's only, there was a long period of time when there was no doer left, I felt I was an empty shell and I would tell art. But the best part about art is it doesn't encourage, it doesn't pat you on the back and say, oh, you made so much progress. And it somewhere within yourself. I knew it, that, this feeling that things are expressing through you. Yet that wasn't it. Till you really, it's seriously, I think it's a very accurate description that you fall into that dark well and you don't come out of it. Like the individual bucket doesn't come back up, and it can be forgotten. Your identity, it doesn't change. Nothing outside can change that. And in that moment, that you are the one. The non-dual Brahm and Atman and all that, talk, I think that is also to a certain point, it doesn't go beyond. That's also a stage, I feel, really. And the absolute is beyond. So it's the source. And in that moment, I know I'm the creator, I'm the destroyer, and the concept of time, oh my God, you really see it. And it's not that my thoughts stopped. My brain didn't stop working, my body was still doing what it was doing right there. And yet, I was very aware of all the thoughts that were going on. And yet, the awareness word, yes, it got pulled out of me.
So the ultimate thing is something beyond awareness.
Absolute.
Absolute.
And I think and in that moment, my mind was still thinking about, that how accurate Einstein was, that it's the alive energy that cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change from one form to the other. And so it is, that alive energy doesn't have any matter outside of itself. So all creation happens through it. So all these thoughts were happening right then. And mine was thinking of, there was like, I don't know. So that's the best I can explain or I can tell about.
Thank you.
when I hear the phrase "you're aware of," you become aware of things. You know, things in your environment, things in your experience. It's really you're looking at an object. You're looking at something. You're seeing something, and whatever it is you're seeing, whatever is the focus of your attention, is an object. It's out there. So, are you aware of that, or is it simply something you're looking at and seeing? I don't think you can. You don't look at awareness per se. It's like if the object of your attention, if you stop being distracted and focus on external objects, when the object of your when no object is in front of the attention, then awareness becomes its own object, so to speak, and then I don't like the idea of saying a consciousness of awareness, but yet that must be accurate because this personality, I remember what happened to me, and it happened to me. I never lost consciousness during the realization. And yes, I saw myself as, there's nothing there to die. So I was shaking my head, repeating to myself, there is no death. There is no death. Because I saw clearly that there was nothing there to die. So I never disappeared. And yet I saw that I never was. So that's kind of crazy talk. But what was final and permanent for me, I can with varying degrees of I can withdraw my attention from all the distractions going on around me. From the one extreme where my attention is utterly focused to the point where I don't know if anyone else is in the room. I'm running a computer program or something. One end of the extreme. To you go the other end where there's all this noise around you, and you can withdraw your attention from it to the point where there's nothing left but rock solid stillness, and it's never not there. So to me, it feels like more than awareness. It's not, it just is, and it's eternal, it's omnipresent, it's all pervading, and when I'm dwelling there, when I withdraw, when I'm not looking at anything else, that's what's left, and it's very comforting to abide in that space.
I was wondering what Shawn thought about Art's question. What's the relationship of those 2 points on the top of Jacob's ladder?
What is in opposition to individual consciousness awareness? What's on the other side? Process observer.
But then, yeah.
He wasn't talking about the opposition. He was talking about
The triangle.
the apex of the triangle versus the baseline point.
Of individual consciousness.
And the absolute?
Yeah, that seemed to be what Art was getting at.
Is that where you were getting at?
Not exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what's up there anyway,
No, what I was getting at is the possibility of an experience of awareness as opposed to the experience of consciousness.
Well, I leaned in when Bob was talking because I suddenly got very interested in what Bob was saying, because he was saying, well, it's not quite awareness that I'm talking about. It's something a little more than awareness. Like you weren't satisfied with that.
No. It seems like I'm not entirely satisfied with the word, with the tagging it, the name. I prefer the word absolute or the expression ground of being. Ground of being doesn't.
The topic
I know, but
It's about
well, but the topic.
individual consciousness.
It's my way of addressing the topic. It's like, okay, awareness. I'm not going to stick with that with that word.
Yeah, but why go off on a tangent rather than say, I have an experience of whatever that might be talking about, the individual consciousness of awareness, if it makes no sense, right? And I don't think Rose was saying everybody's going to experience all this stuff. He was saying I put together something not as a path, but as if for somebody who has a realization and they come back and they can see something that maybe somebody else has had the same insanity, you know.
I mean, I have always interpreted individual consciousness of awareness as awareness of awareness. So that's how I made sense of that.
What are you? Are you?
Me as in
No, you.
this
Really,
lump.
So are you that
You're-
awareness of awareness?
You're all of that.
Well, no, but what do you know about what you are? Is that a different question? In other words, what is the absolute state of being?
Well, the absolute state of being to me is the process observer. I'm talking about experience now. Well, I have to work my way to it, right? I have, in my experience, this awakening, which is I see these things happening within me, thoughts and feelings and processes. I now know myself as something more. I'm a process observer, to use Rose's language. Aha. If I can, still curious though. So I'm still curious. So I see, in my experience, I see eventually that, I can actually, the process observer can see itself, which is the opposite side of that spectrum, individual consciousness of awareness. If those two polarities are held long enough, with enough attention, I don't know what, but if those two polarities are held, then the conciliatory principle of those two things is a non-thing, which is what I am.
The way you phrased the question, you talked about the discovery of awareness. So I assume you weren't talking about discovery of capital A awareness. You're talking about the discovery of awareness as an object in consciousness.
What is that's not on this panel, but what's so interesting to me about awareness is the number of people who espouse the discovery of awareness as the answer, and point to Nisargadatta, and point to I am. I mean, what could be more indicative of I amness than awareness? Pure awareness is like I go back to Rose's, the highest functioning of the human mind. We talked about that. It's like the human mind at its peak of being is awareness.
Sargadatta said that the I am is just a pointer, and even the I am has to go. So I think
exactly.
If someone thinks that they've reached the end of the search because they've gotten to a point where they feel they're some heightened level of awareness or aware of their life, but it's still something that belongs to them. It's the I is still at the behind it all, and the way it occurred, or the way I saw it, the realization I had is, no, I was another, I was out there as any other object. I was not, I had no substance as an individual identity from this omnipresent kind of view. I mean, the physical experience at the time was I was driving a car, and I looked out the windows at some point on the way home, and it's like I felt like I couldn't locate myself. I was, everywhere, and what I was impersonal. It was impersonal and permanent, and contained everything. And I maybe I didn't use that language at the time. Like, now I contain everything. I wasn't really thinking. Didn't have worded thoughts, but.
Well, we have passed the time now by a couple minutes. So we should be able to take this to the breakout.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't want to be in arts group.
I'm having a Groundhog Day experience here.